Hey everyone, welcome to HYPEWORKS podcast with myself, Alex, and
Jake.
Jake. Yeah, this is episode number. What episode are we on? I'm just checking. This is poor.
36.
36. You're right. Joined today by Mr. Elias Stråvik. Is how you pronounce it, Stråvik?
I think it totally works. So here in Sweden, it's Stråvik.
Oh shit.
But like Stråvik is probably the international way to say it for sure.
Yeah. What do they call that little circle above the A?
Oh, I actually don't know like the term on your keyboard. For us, it's just another letter in the alphabet. So I actually never use the thing like the apostrophe essentially or something. I actually don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah,
the circle.
yeah.
One might
Circle,
say.
the circle. Yeah, we were just talking off camera there, Jake. Do you want to keep going there? We're just talking like personal branding and like pivots and stuff, so you can keep going.
I think we're in the age of pivots. I think that's really what the conversation is about. So I have the sort of brand reputation, brand image as somebody that's more or less engaged with social media, though arguably that's not strictly true. I have several revenue streams. So one of them is an agency that mostly focuses on e-commerce, but particularly the digital storefront, social media, Google Ads side of that, the Google and Facebook ecosystems. However, I've productized that. So I have a productized social media agency, which is sold as a product under the name Fizzy. And the new direction of sort of the pivot, as everybody might be aware who listens to this podcast on a weekly basis, I'm a bit obsessed with AI automation. So I'm pivoting. So I've got a new business, which is AI automation. Effectively, I build make.com templates, which you download as a JSON file, and you can upload them and effectively use my AI automation templates in your business. So working hard on that. Check it out, stob.ai. If people want to know, this is a HYPEWORKS exclusive. Why Stob? S-T-O-B. It's because it's bots backwards, and we're the people behind the bots. So that's enough of Jake. Let's talk about the guest.
Yeah,
for sure. Maybe like a brief background, or what are you guys interested in?
Well, we usually have a format. We didn't actually get to the question, so this is a disclosure for most people as well that are not aware of the green room of the HYPEWORKS podcast. But in the green room, Alex and I usually ask people, what is it that we shouldn't talk about? But unfortunately, you didn't get that question. So it's all on the record this time around. But yeah, let's start with your background. Tell us about how you got to where you are and what you do.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So basically, my short story is that got really interested in startups during university. Last year of university, like a friend of mine and I, we decided to start a startup. Been running it for 6 years. And speaking of pivots, we did 3 big pivots within that one company. Like the latest version of that lasted for about 3 years, and so we were doing a B2B SaaS. So we were building an app for Slack and Microsoft Teams for employee well-being. So you can think of it almost like Headspace, but integrated in Slack and Microsoft Teams. Employers could install this app in their Teams workspace, and people could take short breaks that we have recorded of like 1 to 3 minutes long of like stretches, mindfulness, and so on and so forth. And the big idea, if you will, was really the idea that rather than having like people that like interested in doing like taking these short breaks during the day, they might otherwise have to like get some type of license to use Headspace, but then that's a whole other app that's completely beside work. But the idea was like, if it's integrated in your workspace and we can send you reminders there, it might be easier for you to take these tiny habits and do something about it.
it's funny, Elias. We were actually, just sorry to interrupt, we were actually just talking about that like before you joined. Like I've been sat here for basically 9 hours at my desk, and I'm feeling crap because of that. And a part of the problem is just not knowing when to stop and actually take a break. It's a real problem, sure.
It really is, and so again, like our angle to that was again to focus on tiny habits. So like if you download Headspace, they're kind of trying to help you build up a mindfulness habit and like get to like 15-30 minutes of mindfulness. Like that's kind of the path that you're on. But for us, that was like never the goal. It's more like, hey, we're stuck at the computer 9 hours, look up, the day has passed, and we're like, yeah, my back is hurting, my ass is completely asleep, maybe we should do something about that. But so basically we had this we did this pivot early COVID that worked really well because like people were starting to work from home, and like we kind of was able to like get in touch with companies, like telling them about like this is a big problem, but also a big opportunity to help your employees. But then harder times struck with the economic downturn. So like survived one like global crisis, kind of had a bigger problem with the next. So for us, one of the biggest problems was that, of course, employee well-being is the vitamin of vitamin products. Like this isn't the thing that you're kind of like, absolutely, clawing your way to get a hold of when like you're firing employees, and like it's just a terrible time. So we've had a tougher time during the economic downturn, and so from there, basically my co-founder and I, like still wonderful friends, just a fantastic guy, but we kind of decided to go our separate ways right now. He's doing more of his own thing, I'm doing more of my own thing, and for me right now, that is basically to do a productized agency centered around helping startups with growth and kind of the marketing part of things. So even though I'm a technical co-founder, like that was what I was all about, realized that it might be more useful for me to spend my time helping startups with what they might have a bigger challenge with, rather than trying to one-up technical people at being technical. Why not be a technical person in the land of marketing, essentially, and like have your own unique angle there? And I think this makes sense for you as well, Jake, with like these automations. Like that's something that a technical person, that for us that makes so much sense, but like for somebody who's kind of stuck in, maybe don't have that background, it might be harder. So that's again me in just a few minutes.
Okay, right, so many questions now, I've got them lined up. So okay, I have actually worked with a couple, I say various, but just a couple of people that grow businesses, and I think that there's a popular space here. Now I'm going to put you under the spotlight, so this is a bit of a tough question, but I have noticed a trend of, we'll say, fairly young people, perhaps I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, this is not in any derogatory way, that didn't go to university, sat in their parents' basement, are actually running these sort of like growth marketing, growth hacking agencies. Alex and I have had the people like similar on the podcast before, and I've always questioned the effectiveness, because more or less my interaction with these people starts out with, here's a personalized Loom video of your website. I've completely diagnosed the wrong issue, but I'll help you get leads. So how is your approach different? How do you compete within a market space that seems to be like incredibly saturated right now?
So fantastic question. So, my angle is that I send a cold DM saying like, hey, I might be able to help you get 50K more MRR, if you're interested in chatting. No, I'm just kidding. That's like the absolute worst. And I think we've all gotten them so many times. If you can handle the volume is usually the turn of phrase that they use. And it's just awful. No, but so I guess that my angle to this, it is that has been the challenge. Again, like one of the benefits of staying more in the like technical field is that it's kind of easier. It's not as sexy. Like people usually say they get these DMs from like 16-year-old broccoli hair boys of just like I can turn your whole agency around and stuff like that. And so it was a new thing for me.
Elias, we have a nickname. Yeah. Me and Jake have a nickname for these guys. We call them Jolly Green Giants.
That's yes. Okay. Okay, but please do explain. Like, so again, not a native English speaker. What is that?
We'll leave it.
I don't think half our audience base is going to understand that. I think just to unpack that is there's a people can Google this, but there's a themed character that lives on the side of a tinned can of vegetables in the United Kingdom. and his nickname is the Jolly Green Giant, and effectively he's just a massive broccoli character.
Okay. Yeah, so it's still about broccoli, at least. That's the reference. It's kind of unfortunate for me because I've always I always had a sort of a broccoli thing going on, but like not kind of that hard. But yeah, so to your question, like, so this is you could totally see it as a super saturated market and an unbelievable amount of spam, like just insane. So to me, that is both a problem and an opportunity. So for me, the most important thing is that the problem is real, and it seems to be, as far as I can tell. When I talk to startup founders, talk to agencies, the number one problem they tend to have is not really, delivery, like building the product or like delivering on it. Like, of course, if you have no technical people, but in my experience, I was an engineer, and I'm like, if you give me enough time, I will solve any engineering problem, not research level, but engineering, enough time, and I will solve it. But for marketing, sometimes it felt like, give me 1,000 years and I would not be able to perform the way that some people seem to be doing in marketing. It's just like more of a black magic type thing. So I got interested in this in our startup, and we sent kind of like a lot. We did a lot of outreach at our startup. So over 3 years, we sent 16,000 cold emails. My co-founder is just one of the best salespeople that I've ever met. Perhaps the absolute best person I've ever met. And so he isn't scared at all about like picking up the phone, calling people. It was super effective. He did a fantastic job. But my job was kind of like to figure out, is there any other way of doing like marketing and sales that we might be missing? So he was just executing, and I was kind of more like experimenting. And one thing that I came across that I thought was so interesting was that we were in our target market was HR professionals. And so I don't know if you're aware of some big HR software companies like Lattice or Culture Amp. Have you heard these names before?
I used Culture Amp before, yeah.
Culture Amp, okay, so
yeah.
Wonderful. So I saw something that I thought was really interesting there, where Culture Amp, they have, of course, like a community called like, Culture Amp, not like a Slack that's all about like, if you are a user or like you're super interested in our product, like come here to this Slack, we can give you support and whatever. But they also had something that they called the People Geek community, and other like software startups had like in the HR space had like Resources for Humans, that was Lattice, and HR Superstars. And these were communities that were not about the product or the solution that these companies had, but about the problem and the people you want to target. And these groups had tens of thousands of people in them that were just like chatting about what it's like to be an HR professional, and like, they were sharing resources, events, and it was all powered by Culture Amp, let's say. But they didn't hard sell in any way. But this was kind of like the started to give me an idea of like, maybe we can flip how we approach sales and marketing, where instead of saying, the classic format is like of cold outreach is essentially, hey, my name is X, I'm building Y. I saw that you were in space Z, and I think we've helped similar companies. Would love to grab a demo or something if you want to chat. And that can work, but you have to hit them at exactly the right time. It's like I get 40 of these emails a day, and they just end up in the bin. I've almost never replied to anything. But the alternative is to create something of value to help them first and say, hey, my name is Elias. I'm working in the employee well-being space. I've created a community for HR professionals. We have 1,000 members with people from Google, Meta, Amazon. And I saw that you were working at this company. I thought it would be great for you and your colleagues. Would love to invite you. And that is a completely different approach of figuring out ways to give first. That's not about your product, but helping them in whatever which way, whether it's communities, events, free tools, whatever you can think of. Invite them to that. And these communities can often grow to 10 or 100 times bigger, or like an event about like, how to approach, AI in marketing. That could be a community or events, but rather than talking specifically about stop, that's for later. But let's first gather people. Like you could probably bring 1,000 people, 10,000 people into a community or an event like that, and then you've established yourself as a authority, and they trust you, you're credible, you've only helped, you haven't soft sold, you're not anything, you're just helping. And then once you have that, you can like ask for feedback about the event, you can get the conversations going.
So Elias,
and
I
then
have a
an
question.
opportunity.
So
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm thinking about school. I'm thinking about school.com.
Yeah.
The cynical part of me would say, like, people think like school is like a pyramid scheme, right? Like you're getting people in there to basically you charge a membership fee, whatever it is, and then that like all adds up to great profit for the school owner. But then what is the actual value? And there's a lot of other examples, of YouTubers doing this now. What's your kind of response to that, like in terms of that side of it?
So I'm not quite sure I follow. So could you elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, so basically, I think there's a kind of belief that a lot of these kind of communities are built for, or basically selling bags of smoke. They're not really selling value. They're just kind of selling good vibes, and there's a lot of these guys now. What's the word for it? It's like Iman Gadzhi types. Like that Iman Gadzhi guy. Like he's like, I'll get you a Bentley, I'll get you a Rolls Royce, I'll get you a house in Dubai. That's the kind of vibe.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm not going to
got
mention
it.
Andrew Tate because that's another level but it's that kind of vibe.
100%.
It's the word you're looking for, shill, by the way.
There you go, shill.
Shill. Okay, yeah. So again, not native speaker, but to my understanding, shill is like, yeah, we're shilling a product. Like, we're just talking about the product, even though we're like, yeah, nobody asked you, but you're just like, oh, you should use this product.
You're shilling the dream of success and wealth and whatnot without actually delivering value.
Right.
Yeah. And so again, I might be even more useful to kind of go through the example of how we did it. So again, and please do call me out if you feel this was shilling, but I don't think so. But please call me out. For us, the number one question was, okay, who are we targeting with our employee well-being startup? And we're like, HR professionals. They're the way into companies. Cool. And what's the area? Employee well-being. Nice. So where do these people hang out right now? And they hang out on LinkedIn. So for us, it was obvious. Let's create a problem-oriented, as I call it, community on LinkedIn. That's not about our startup, but it's for these people. And so I created a community called The Daily Break. And it was just a LinkedIn page where people could follow. And every day I would do stuff like, ask like a question of the day, do a poll of the day, people that answered, I could turn that into content and be like, oh, these people answered that to this question, like, give them shout outs like that everybody could learn from. We put on events where I invited and hosted the previous director of communications at Microsoft, the head of community of Slack, and we just talked about like these challenges of employee well-being and their approach to it, and never like focused on like guinea pig, which was our terrible name of startup. But so again, resources built these people, like they like the word thought leaders, and so we try to help them with the thought leadership in the community. They share their opinions, and we try to like amplify what we thought was really good. And yeah, really tried to add value that way. Content, resources, anything we could think of, build these relationships with these people. And because of course we are the funnel into the communities. And so of course we ask for feedback, everything. And if we kind of build a relationship, then at some point we can say to them, hey, by the way, we know that your work involves a lot of things. We're building one solution in this space. If you're interested, I would love to chat more about it. If not, please enjoy this free stuff for life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were interested at that point. I don't know if that counts as shilling. Again, please call me out, but that was the general approach.
I think there's a fine line. Like I've been looking at a lot of brands recently, and in the fitness space, there's like brands like Gymshark and Represent, and they're doing these like run clubs. So they bring together like people in different cities to go running. And of course, at the start of the run, they give out free merch, right? They give out free clothes.
Yeah.
I just think it's with this kind of marketing, it's definitely a fine line between, you know, delivering real value and also like not pushing your own stuff, you know.
No, I do. Jake, call me out now. What do you think?
No, I'm not calling anybody out. No, I'm very curious about the process. So effectively, I'm also curious about your new business, right? Your new direction that you're into right now. It's like, if you're starting your new business, are you starting that by building a community and then figuring out the product, or do you have a product and build the community or the content and the value to the audience around the product that you're selling? And if so, what is your process for creating content of value for that particular audience for the solution that you're selling? Sorry, there's a lot packed into that. There's really two questions. Number one is, the first question is, do you build an audience and then monetize, or do you have a product, build an audience for that product, and then sell them the solution? And if so, how do you come up with the value proposition of the content in the second scenario? So the first scenario is about choosing something you love, building an audience, and then figuring out what they want. Second scenario is having a solution, fine-tuning a content process that delivers value to a particular audience that you can later then sell that solution.
Fantastic. And yeah, I'll try to answer the first. If I forget the second, please remind me. But
I'll probably forget.
I hope we'll get there. So first question is really interesting. To me, this is almost like a type of question where like, did your startup idea come from what we can call like technology push or like product push, or from market pull? And while one may be better than the other in general, I think both can work. So to me, like when I like, so for me, it's one thing. But let's say the startups that I'm helping, most of the time they come to me because they have a product, they have some customers, or they might even have an idea, but they are trying to figure out, like they are in a sense pushing. They have something that they want to make it bigger, or like get into the market in the first place, and they don't have a community, they don't do events, they don't do a ton of content. That's the most common thing. And so then my job, as I see it, is to help them figure out, if we want to create this funnel, starting from not like trying to, for instance, hey, I'm here to help you market, let's buy 20 domains, warm them up, blast 10,000 emails with this pitch in 2 weeks. Some people have that approach. I personally am not a huge fan, and have never done it. But then my pitch is basically, what's problem is your product solving, and for whom? And then given like where you are in your process, like a community is more work to make fantastic than an event. So my recommendation is usually to start on the end of an event, because it's easy to launch a new Discord and then like invite people, but almost always, unless it's very like carefully like moderated and done a lot of work with, it's just gonna die. And so what I usually recommend is like, hey, let's put on an event that's only about helping your target market. And like, I don't care if you're recommending like your competitors. I don't care about anything else, but like try to add value to them. So let's say that you are an ads agency, for instance. I haven't worked with any ads agencies yet, so I think that's a good example of, without like calling like anyone out that I worked with. But so let's say the problem that they're solving might be for e-commerce companies, and those are the ones that they want to target. Let's say they're in the equestrian space. Okay, cool. And then like, let's put on an event that helps educate these people on like how to approach ads in the equestrian market. And let's use our socials, cold outreach, any medium, our network, any medium we have, and try to invite people to this thing. And it is truly important to, in that sense, not shill any higher degree than like, hey, my name is Elias, and I'm working at this company, been like doing this a lot, so that's how I am a credible person. I think that's fine, but like not trying to upsell them in any way, but rather just like giving our best tips. So like, here's the problem that you're going to run into. Like most of you focus on Facebook. I think it's actually way better to focus on Google in these cases. Here's how you should approach traffic ads versus lead ads, da, da, da. You're just helping. And then from there, you have these registered people that probably may have watched, and then you can follow up with them. You can create content from your events that you can repost. There are so many ways to like keep this like machine of giving first churning. When people do show interest in that, and you are like clearly love what you're putting out there, then I do think it's fair game to, in a sense, shill yourself to the degree of saying like, I always say give first, but not give only. Like the only way you're going to keep this machine running and helping people is if you at some point make money. And so similarly for Culture Amp and Lattice and all these great companies running these communities, if they were like if they didn't have any way of making money, people would lose this valuable resource. So I think that's fair game. When they love you, that when they love what you put out there, then I think it's fine to introduce what you do and ask if you want to chat more. Does that kind of answer the first question? That, you know, of course,
I think that answers the second question, because the second question is more like there is a second part to that question that you've answered, which is how do you define what like, for example, ads, social media. There is a ton of social media agencies out there. There is a ton of advertising agencies out there. How do you start then to create an audience that stands out, has a different proposition? I mean, the event space and building community is nice. I think, though, I don't mean to challenge you. By all means, come back at me.
No, please do.
But I think that a lot of social media sort of agencies now are kind of, I don't want to say they're dying, but their lead funnel has changed from a traditional model whereby you can create and demonstrate value through the content that you output into people-led creators that have an agency behind them, such as, here's how to make a reel go viral. I'm going to break it down in 3 simple steps, okay? So, you know, if you were, with your methodology, if you were creating the funnel, where would you start? Would you start by, how would you create a community? Is it content-led, or is it, if it is content-led, is it therefore creator-led, or can you still build a content funnel that uses a less, you know, personable and more static form of content?
Okay, so I think it's a fantastic second part to the second question. I really like this. So I totally agree. I see the same pattern, like, you know, from these amazing like design agencies, for instance, started by Alex and Nick Buss that are doing baked design. So these are just like a wonderful example of like, these are like beacons in the community, and people want to work with them, like get help from them, and then they have their agency. I think it's super clear that that's super powerful. And I would say that I'm seeing that shift, and it seems that many people that I've chatted with running agencies see that as well and want to jump on that train. And then I say, amazing, let's put you like let's focus on your like basically ability to give first with your content. Let's like post this from your account. Let's like, what's your opinion, and build your like audience around that, and then know that this will like funnel over to the agency. With that said, I think it's still totally possible to do the opposite, where you have the organization essentially. But again, I think the interesting part there is exactly what Lattice and Culture Amp have done. They've created like the People Geeks community, the HR Superstar community, the Resources for Human community, and we created the Daily Break community. And so, because as long as people like know what they're like getting into and follow, and like this isn't the startup, the solution, but this is like a community around this thing. If you then have like awesome people in that community moderating, asking questions, like getting everybody engaged, I think these people are incredibly useful and like important. But I still think you can be community led without one or a few people that are headlining it. I do think it's still possible, even though I see the same trend.
I think, though, again, not to be the devil's advocate again, but
That's the point.
the situation is like, if you talk about social media or ads, those two spaces, then the reason why I feel that we've moved into this sort of like, I'm going to break a TikTok reel down on TikTok for you. TikTok reel. I'm terrible. An Instagram reel on Instagram for you. Then, it's sort of one, it's almost evidence because people are building up millions of subscribers or followers via doing this. But two, it's also because the space is completely saturated. So with regards to the aforementioned take a break space that you had built on LinkedIn, was that at the time when it was a trend? How important is being on the trend and capitalizing on a trend to standing out? And if you were to go into a saturated market such as social media and ads, is there still a possibility or an alternative to doing it that's not necessarily creator led? I'm ramming the questions today. I'm really sorry.
I think I got the soul of your question, so I'll try to answer. So I don't think like we were in a trend, and I don't think this community grew to 1,000 people, not like the numbers that you see on TikTok and Instagram, where you're like, oh yeah, 1 million overnight essentially, or like 100K. But the interesting thing was, of course, these were 1,000 HR professionals at huge companies. The value here was immense for us and our company, but it wasn't like viral in the sense of the numbers.
Yeah, I don't think HR people have ever gone viral.
Yeah, I have to disagree. Having spent more time than any outsider would want to.
Maybe for the wrong reasons. Maybe for the wrong reasons.
I'll leave it at that. But yeah, you would be surprised. So here's what I could say. If somebody came to me and is like, hey, I'm up for anything, how do you think we should approach this? Should we approach it creator-led, or like kind of like a community, like a name, an organization almost? What do you think would work best? I would almost always opt for, especially in the early days, being creator-led, because we are just programmed to like people and like understand people, like a few seconds with you guys and like I'm having a good time, but like going to a brand and like getting this vibe from them immediately it's incredibly hard. So I would almost always say, if you can go creator-led right now, go creator-led. But I think there's still lots of opportunity to essentially build the AI automation marketing community, even if you aren't the front runner.
Funny you should say that. I tell you, I'll give you an example. I'm going to share this with the audience, and let's say I've got two products. Okay, I've got an agency, but that's a service business. So now I have two product revenue streams, and one is a social media agency that's productized, and the other one is AI automation templates that you can download from Stop. Okay, so these are the two aforementioned businesses. Now, what I've noticed is, like, I generally don't create I don't create social media content about social media. Personally, I find it a little bit cringy. I just can't do it. I'm just not wired that way. But AI automation, I'm pretty passionate about. I mean, Alex, we've been talking about this, and I've been talking about AI automation now for well over a year, and it's kind of just only really getting hot with use of the no code tools. But me and Alex flew to a conference in Singapore, and I talked about this. This was like last year, back in March. So I'm really enthusiastic about this. So I started creating content for it, and that content is organically taking off to the point now where my outreach, which I guess is less organic, I mean, it's still organic outreach that's happening on LinkedIn and via email, is driving similar amounts of traffic to my website that is not creator-led than my organically creator-led product. So I've got these two products which are completely different. I respect that. One is kind of on a trend. One is a productized. The trend is that it is productized, but it seems to me that from my experience, and I guess this is going back to my own two questions here, that I've started to build a product and a company based off having people interested in the topic that I am talking about. I did not approach it as a business. Whereas the other product business, I already had an agency and I wanted to increase efficiency within my business. So I productized it. But it's actually, if I'm honest, it's a harder sell than the creator-led content because people are actually seeing the power demonstrated in real time.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. Like Elon Musk, he gets a lot of attention for himself, but at the same time, he's always constantly promoting his own companies. So it does feel like Jake's what he's talking about there is like that is the wave you've got to get on now. You've got to put your face out there. Like literally, you have to put yourself out there, and then by virtue of doing that, you're driving traffic and driving interest in your stuff.
We've always talked as well, Alex, like maybe I'm sorry, we're taking over now. It's become the Jake and Alex show only, but we've talked about in the last 3 or 4 podcasts about AI and AI automation. And what is it that humans can do that AI can't take over? And one of those things is, I guess, humanized, personable content, because humans are very unpredictable. They're not algorithmic. I mean, even these chat GPTs that say and ahs, which we've talked about previously, it still feels like a computer. It doesn't. It feels like a humanoid. It doesn't feel like a human. I'm not perfect. I make speech mistakes. I mess up my sentence organization. It's not.
And of course, you got to throw in meme culture as well. Like, how many memes have we had in the last month? Like, there's been so many memes, and that drives interest, right? It drives news. It drives everything. Is that something you're thinking about, Elias? Like, because you're a funny guy. Like, you've already made some great jokes here. Do you think humor is like a good thing, and you can work it into your business? And
absolutely. And I think one of the most interesting things on this theme of like what do we humans what will still be safe for us and what do we want to do? One of the most interesting things I've heard for that argument is the case with chess. It's like computers beat human at chess 20 years ago, and we're not even close, and we never will have a chance ever again in our lives. Does anyone watch computers beating computers anymore, or even like computers against humans? Nobody gives a shit. But chess is more like loved and exploding in popularity now than ever, because people love watching people. And it's just the case. Nobody's forcing anyone. There's this case of like, it's not even close. Like, it's not about performance. And you can, of course, make the argument, I'm sure that we could build a machine theoretically that's better at football. But like chess is so clear that you could actually have the pieces move. And it would still be a completely clear game. But we just don't care. And so I think it's very clear, like, but it's also different. So when I go on TikTok, there are some stuff that I watch that is like completely generated as like news or like a story. So this mother was like looking for her child. Like that's probably almost all like cut together AI generated. I don't care who the person is. So sometimes it's fine, but oftentimes it's not. Of like, I would never watch this in AI generated content. And I think it's, again, super, super important. And to the point of like outreach and stuff, to build your business. I'll give you an example if you're interested. So I try to think very deeply about when I take action and why I took that action. So I've sent, again, my co-founder and I, with him in the driver's seat for a lot of it, we've sent 16,000 cold emails. And I just asked myself the question, have I ever responded to a cold email? And it's like, almost never. I don't know about you guys. It would be fantastic to bring you in here. Have you guys ever replied to a cold email that you remember?
You know, back when the send a loom video was a trend, the first one I got, I did. I thought that was fantastic, a little loom video. And then now I've had about 50 since. It's like, okay, well, but again, am I highlighting the importance of being on the trend or being at the front of the trend now? You know, like sales tactics, marketing tactics, they get old. It's like, again, like chess, right? Somebody discovers a winning tactic, everybody starts using it. Now people know the tactic. It's, you know, there's an evolution of tactics that goes on.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, I guess it would depend on the tactic that's being played against me. But you're right. If we just talked about sheer volume and the amount that I'd responded to, yeah, barely any, like 0.001%.
Elias, who's some people, you did mention Baked.design. I've heard of those guys as well. Like who's some other people you think are, I don't want to put you on the spot, but who's some people you think are doing really cool?
It's been a stressful,
cool stuff.
It's been a stressful podcast.
No, I'm here for it.
I mean, everyone talks about levels, right? In the Peter Levels in the indie hacking space. Is there anyone aside from him, like, you know?
So of course, like if we go from the Hall of Fame people, of course we have Levels, we have Thibaut, who did like type frames and many other things, just bought Feather.so. And then of course the one and only Mark Liu, like he is also one of these people where it's like, I'm building a code boilerplate. It's not the best code boilerplate. I'm not a programmer in that sense. Like he is a programmer, but he's like, I'm not the best programmer. This is not my passion. And he's just smashing like the competition in the boilerplate space.
I tell you who I see a lot right now is the Perplexity guy. He's everywhere. He is
dope. Yeah.
That guy is everywhere. He was in Japan like this week, and like Perplexity is just all over the news. Like it's everywhere. And we've all used Perplexity, right? It's fine. It's not like mind blowing. You know, it's not like, oh, it's a Wikipedia with ChatGPT. Like, but the guy really, he's pushing that company like to the top of the news cycle, or his team.
It's almost like
as well.
For sure, and like it's like when Sam Altman went on this like international press tour and just like met with every world leader ever, and he was just like for a short time it was just him in the news and no one else essentially. No, but so definitely there. But just to come back to the question of like how much personality can matter, like who you are, and again I realized that tactics are very interesting. It's almost like falling for a scam. You do it sometimes when they're damn clever, but then almost never again. Just as you said, like the first loom you get, you're like, where you see your company's background, you're like, what the fuck? And then you click it, and then you're like, and then it's like very, very mediocre, and it's like obviously a kind of like either it's one guy who does like a total clickbait and never gets to the point, or it's generated background of like scrolling, and it's obviously fake. So very, very quickly, we just change our adaptation to it. Just like we now see that, oh, this message is a ChatGPT personalized. I don't give a shit. But I once got a message from somebody who I've signed up for their product. I wasn't using it. I was just doing some research, but I got an email from this person. And I saw that in her bio, I saw that she was like from Stanford, NYC. And then I went into her Twitter or something, and I saw that she was also a concert violinist. And I'm just like, I don't give a shit about what she's building. Like if it is interesting or not. I mean, not that I evaluated her thing and didn't care. I was more like, whatever she is building, I don't give a shit. I want to talk to this person because she seems dope. And so I did. And she was amazing. And like we had a great conversation, like super friendly. And it was great. So I think that part is unbelievably underestimated by people doing outreach. We tend to focus on product market fit, like, oh, the product, the problem, the solution, blah, blah, blah. If you're like, hey, I'm Alex, I've helped these, like whatever, like I've learned so much about this space. I am putting on an event about the stuff that I've learned. And like, that can make such a difference.
So
and I think it's very, very
so what you're saying is the most successful people are like narcissists. They just
100%.
they blow their own trumpet and they win.
Please be a narcissist. No, so she like again, she didn't like necessarily hard sell that part. I don't think she mentioned it, but maybe it was from a Stanford email or something. Somehow I did a double take and checked it, and I was like, holy shit, this is an amazing person. Yeah, and so again, to that point, the person was the reason that I replied, not the business at all. So, and that's what I think that these people are figuring out, that it's so powerful. Not that, business doesn't matter, but the people matter so much more right now. Couldn't agree more.
Okay. Alex, that's bringing us on to the segue. You know what's coming, don't you? So we're into the final part of the show. It is future predictions. So, Elias.
Yes. Oh, no.
This is the limelight is on you. You've got to make some future predictions. They could be about yourself, about the world, about the industry. But what do you think is around the corner?
Oh, good Lord. I really want to go back to being grilled about marketing. This is way harder. Oh gosh. One thing, okay, so just like top of the dome of what we've been chatting about.
Love that.
One thing that I've thought about that I haven't seen, in my opinion, enough people talk about is like productized agencies seem to be taking over. Like that's all that we see. I think you'll hopefully agree with me there.
Fully.
But I haven't seen that many get very big. If we take a quick step back on baked up design, they are the light of the community, because like maybe the design joy guy is more bigger in numbers or something, but they still like I think the baked up design, like Alex and Nick, these people are just like trying to help everyone, like get on their level. Like they're so helpful, like they're universally loved as far as I could tell, and again from myself as well. But it's still $1 million in I don't know 6-9 months. It's amazing, but is it huge?
No, not compared to traditional agencies. Yeah.
I have a theory about this.
Please go.
From my own HYPEWORKS exclusive here. Yeah. This is what I've come to realize through selling a service agency, a productized agency, and effectively a product. Okay, so I've come to realize this about productized agencies. Mm-hmm. Most people, including business owners, are effing lazy. Okay, so the problem with a productized service is this. Okay, design seems to be the field that is doing the best in the productized agency world. And that's because most people are not necessarily designers, okay? But if you per se want to run a different kind of service, let's say, you can't have a massive scale. Okay, let's take Fizzy as an example. Fizzy, my social media agency, which is productized, really relies on the business having a social media or marketing manager that can utilize it. Okay, who are my competitors? My competitors are outsourced freelance social media managers. Yeah. They might not be able to produce as good strategy. They might not be able to produce as much quality, volume, or as cheaply and effectively go by Fizzy. However, most business owners, they just want it taken care of. They don't necessarily think or understand what the difference in quality will be between buying Fizzy as a product and telling people through a dashboard what to do than just recruiting Hannah, the freelancing marketing social media manager who lives down the street that you see on a Friday night in the pub. People don't understand what is the difference between the product. Now, the product version of the social media agency that I run, it can be cheaper than Hannah because it's systematic in the way it's set up, which means it can scale because it's a very process-driven business. However, again, you will end up interfacing with the agency via a dashboard and having to tell them what to do rather than just say, Hannah, get the F on with it, you know? So I think that design is a little bit different because people generally go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. They have an idea in their head about what they might want something to look like, but they can't necessarily action it themselves. Whereas like other spaces, and again, I'm just using social media as an example, people might not necessarily, like the people that are buying these services might not necessarily understand what a good output is, okay? What constitutes an effective social media strategy? Whereas Hannah might be crap, you know, these people don't know what is good. So they don't buy services that are productized within agency. I'm just using social media as an example, but I could use PR. I could use advertising. If it's sold as a product, it's much harder to determine than it is as if just giving it to a person, because you know that you don't have to take care of it, because you might not necessarily value or understand what the value is that is created in the effectively the productized service that you're buying. Whereas if you buy it as a person service, someone else is doing it and you don't need to think about it.
And Elias is right, because it is a trend we're seeing more and more. I think companies don't want full-time employees anymore. They want to outsource, and that's going to keep going. Any other big predictions, Elias? Or doesn't have to be work, tech, politics, or
hey, be careful.
Be careful.
I think the three of us have a wonderful friendship ahead of us. Let's call that the final prediction. That's all I can say.
Awesome.
Please don't prove me wrong.
Awesome. Yeah, great to have you on, and we'll get you back on. And where can people find you? Best one's Twitter, right? X.
100% on Twitter at Elias Stråvik.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Newsletter.
Always happy to
newsletter as well.
Nothing like that. I'm trying to keep up with one thing, but thank you so much.
All right, man. All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.